And if you manage to get yourself a client or a sponsorship or an affiliate or an ad and you're making money, that's a huge win. That is a huge win because that creates longevity for you to do the rest of the stuff. So that's another reason why it's so important to have access to all sorts of different data, because if you can only see listens, you think that's the only thing that matters, and it's not. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode number 100, How to Never Miss an Episode. Today, for episode number 101, one spot you need to be looking at but may not know about. So, in the very beginning, I think it's gotten easier and it makes more sense now and it's more available and it's more common knowledge. But in the very beginning, people would say, how do you host a podcast? How does that work? How do you get on Apple and Spotify and all these places? Do you have to upload it there every time? And my analogy always used to be, no, it's kind of like a group chat where you send the message to one place and then it gets sent to all the other people in the group chat. And that's what a podcast host is. That's how we get our podcasts out to Apple and Spotify and all these other places. iHeartRadio and Pandora, depending on what mood they're in. All of these other places. So for a lot of us, we start with a host, and there's a million. Podbean, and there's a million of them. Libsyn, Acast, I think there's also Bcast, there's Buzzsprout, there's a million different ones you can host on. But we start with our host, and then we get to a point where we just kind of run that system forever, and we look at our host profile, because that's where all of our analytics are. So we can see how many people are listening and what countries they're in and all that happy jazz. While most hosts have really good analytics, there is a deeper dive you can take by going to the actual directory itself. Okay, so what are we talking about in this episode? One spot you need to be looking at, but may not know about. Maybe you do know about this. I don't know. I know a lot of the people I've worked with had no idea this even existed. It's called Apple Podcast Connect. It's a pain in the butt to get into at times because who knows what your Apple password is, depending on how organized or disorganized you are. But it is a place where you can go and you can see how many subscribers you have, or followers is what it's considered, on Apple Podcasts. It's a place you can go and you can see what your total consumption rate is for each episode. And that means how much of the episode is being consumed on average. It's a place you can go to see how many people are listening for a longer period of time. It just has better data. Now, here's the thing. The data is going to be different because it's only Apple Podcasts. So let's say you go on to your host platform. We use Buzzsprout. I don't get a commission or anything for saying that. It's just I enjoy the platform. It works really well. We use Buzzsprout. So let's say I go there and I say, all right, let me go back. How many listens did I get on episode number 100? Oh, I got 500 listens. Awesome. Then I go log into Apple Podcast Connect and it only says 200 listens. Why are those numbers different? Well, not all of the listens came from Apple. Some came from Spotify, and some came from Podchaser, and some came from iHeartRadio, whatever, all those other different places. So the numbers aren't going to look the same, but you're able to look at a different data set. I don't know if any podcast host could possibly have all the data yet. I don't know if there's anyone where you can go on there and find out your consumption rate of an episode. I don't know if there's anywhere where you could possibly find the amount of subscribers you have because every platform is different. Spotify is different than Apple in terms of subscribers, in terms of followers. So all you do is Google Apple Podcast Connect and sign in with the same email that you use to start the podcast. If you have again, I don't know how every single host works, but I know on Buzzsprout you can go into directories, and when you're getting your show on all these directories to begin with, it'll have you set up through Apple Podcast Connect. But in the beginning, it didn't do that. In the beginning, you just hit a button and it sent it out to Apple for you, and it was like this different thing where you didn't even really know how to get there. So you can probably find it through your host if you go into directories or if you go around where it talks about your RSS feed. If you don't have that option, just Google Apple Podcast Connect. You'll have to enter your Apple ID and your password. It might require you to copy and paste your RSS feed, or it might just show up and you might be able to just click on your podcast and kind of take it from there. But all you want to do is click on analytics and dive into the analytics as much as you can. Don't obsess over them. I've said that many times. Don't obsess over them, but this is an extra data set. If you listened early on, one of the episodes I did is talking about how to get on the charts. When you hear people say this is a top 100 podcast or this is a top 10 podcast or whatever it is, right? This show you're listening to is a top 100 podcast. What does that matter? Well, when you get on the charts, you get the opportunity for more organic eyes. Okay, well, how do you do that? What is the algorithm that helps you do that? It is number of subscribers. It is number of listens in a total period of time. I think the estimate is a 7-day period, I believe. Nobody really knows that for certain. And it is total consumption rate. So you might have the most listens you've ever had, but your consumption rate also might not be very high. If you look at your consumption rate when you have guests, and it's a lot lower than when you do solo episodes, that could be a suggestion that your audience wants to hear more of you. If it's the opposite, maybe they want to hear less of you. If you go on vacation and you do a podcast from a different location and you don't have the same level of audio quality and you notice the consumption rate is lower, that's a sign. If your guest had crappy audio and you got a 20% consumption rate, that's a sign. If you have a really low consumption rate on an episode and it's a topic that you haven't talked about before, that's a potential sign, and vice versa. If you have a guest on and you have a 120% consumption rate, that means people went back and listened to different parts of the episode. Maybe that guest was awesome, or maybe you were awesome on that episode, whatever it is. So it just allows you to make different decisions. I think one of the most important things is it allows you to see how many subscribers you have, how many followers you have. It's probably an underutilized call to action because it's different than it used to be. Back in the day, when someone subscribed to your show, it automatically downloaded all the episodes, so life was good and it was a lot easier. Now it's not really that way anymore. There's a lot more hoops to jump through for someone to get downloaded or to get your show to get downloaded consistently by them. It's not as easy as it used to be. In the old days, it was kind of like the cheat code because they didn't really even have to listen for it to count as a download because it automatically downloaded it. So the numbers were skewed more. But if you have a podcast that is very niched, sometimes the listens might not be trending in the direction you want, but the subscribers might be. And that means you're getting to the right people. Sometimes your subscribers might be going down, but your listens might be going up. Okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, that can mean a lot of different things, right? The more data we have, I think the better decisions we can make. So Apple Podcast Connect. The other one is Spotify for podcasters. So if you just Google Spotify for podcasters, I think it ends up being podcasters.spotify.com, but it's the same thing. It'll have the total amount of starts. It'll have the amount of streams. So starts is the number of times any episode was played for 0 seconds or more. I don't know how you play something for 0 seconds, but you get the picture. Streams is the same thing, except it's for more than 60 seconds. So somebody listened for more than a minute. Listeners is the amount of unique people that started any episode, and then followers is the number of people who are following your podcast. So same thing. It's probably worth checking in here because there's a ton of different data. It shows we gained this amount of listeners or this amount of followers, we lost this amount. It's just more data. The gender breakdown, the age breakdown, the location breakdown. I don't know about you, but on Buzzsprout, there is no age breakdown. I don't have that. I don't have that information to me. I don't have followers. I don't have listeners. I don't have impressions. Everything's a little bit different.
Hey, Kevin, Kim here. Just wanted to send you a video to say thank you so much for your help on creating the Peaceful Productivity Podcast. You know, I couldn't have done it without you. I knew you'd be lots of great help with the technical aspects of getting the podcast going, but you went well above and beyond that. You helped me with the strategy and you gave me all kinds of really great support. You know, I think the key to success in business is a great attitude, and you have that in spades. You really walk the walk. So thanks again. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
So that's really the ultimate lesson in this episode. The ultimate lesson is your podcast host has some really good data, but if you can go into Apple Podcast and Spotify, which are the two biggest ones, then you're going to get a lot more data. And that's going to be super helpful to make different decisions. That's really what we want at the end of the day. That's why in the beginning it's so hard, because if you only have 15 episodes, if you only have 20 episodes, I'm not talking down to that. I'm not saying you haven't done great, and most shows don't get to 15 or 20, so give yourself a pat on the back. What I am saying is you don't have that much data yet. We don't really know. It just hasn't been that long. It hasn't been long enough where people have gone to another show yet, or they've left and came back. We just haven't experienced that yet. So this episode might not be at all valuable to you. You might say, Kev, I've already known both of these things. Well, maybe this is a gentle reminder to go check it out. Maybe you haven't checked it out in a couple months. Let's go do that. Maybe it's a gentle reminder that we need to tell people to subscribe more, right? That's something we could all probably do a better or a more opportune job doing. Maybe it's in your intro. Maybe it's in your outro. I don't know. Maybe this is a gentle reminder to say, look, a lot of people are probably going to skip the intro. A lot of people are probably going to skip the outro. We got to put it somewhere in the episode. We should probably do a live read. Hey, if you enjoyed what we talked about today, please subscribe. Something like that. So there's lessons even if we are already practicing the behavior. But if you're not doing it, check it out. Go check out Apple Podcast Connect. See what you can glean, one of my favorite words, from the stats, from the analytics, from the consumption rate, from all that. Go check out Spotify for podcasters. See what all that's about. The more data, the better. Now, I don't want you to obsess over the data, but I do think the more data we have, the better off we're going to be. If you are on YouTube, there is a ton of data. There is so much data, it's not even funny. It's an overwhelming amount. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole, and I am going to have, 2 weeks from today, I will be in Toronto, and I'm speaking at an event with a mastermind with Evan Carmichael. And while I'm there, I'm going to interview him on YouTube and speaking and interviewing and being interviewed and all that stuff. So I'll pick his brain a little bit on what are the most important stats to look for on YouTube and all that stuff. So maybe we'll have another stat-heavy episode. But that's really what I wanted to talk about today. A simple one, a quick one. They always end up being 20 minutes, no matter how quick I say they're going to be. But you might not know about those two spots, so I think it's worth looking into. And last thing on this, recently, I've been doing a lot of podcast breakthrough sessions recently, and one of the questions I get asked most often is, I want to grow more. How do I grow more? And I always say, okay, well, what does that mean to you? What does growth mean to you? Is it number of listens? Is it number of clients? Is it number of guests, number of opportunities? Or is it number of followers or subscribers? Because all of those are different. And all of those are potentially different strategy. If you want to grow if you're a coach, right? Let's say you have a podcast about fitness and you coach people on fitness. Having guests might be really good for listens. It might be really good for exposure. It might be really good for networking. It might not be as good for getting clients, though. It might be good for followers or subscribers, for sure. But just because it's good for one thing does not mean it's good for all things. So that's another thought around having more data is you have more metrics to track, and you can figure out, well, what are the most important metrics to you? I think the most important 3 metrics are total listens, total subscribers, and then dollars made. That's my belief, just because I think one of the reasons most podcasts don't last long enough to become what the person wants is because they don't make money and then they can't sustain whatever they're doing. Now, again, I'm not saying you're going to make money in the first week or the first month, but I do think being creative and understanding that's going to be, I don't want to say it's going to have to happen. I don't want to say it's going to have to be a necessity, but unless you want to edit your episodes forever, and if you enjoy doing it, do that. It's going to get to a point eventually where maybe you run out of time, or maybe you love talking into the microphone, but you don't want to do the editing or whatever. You don't want to reach out to get guests on, whatever it is, unless you just want to spend money that you're making at your career or from savings, you're going to want to monetize in some way, shape, or form. So total listens, total subscribers / followers, and then total dollars made. If one of those is going up, you're probably in a pretty good place. That's kind of how I think of it. If your subscribers are going up, your listens are going to go up pretty much no matter what. It's just is it at the rate you want it to? Unless you're getting 0 listens a week, which you're probably not. Even if you're getting 5, it's still technically going up. But if you're getting 1 new subscriber every week, okay, that's cool. We like that. That's good. If you're getting 100 new listens every month, so if you had 1,000 listens month 1 and then 1,100 month 2, or 50 month 1, 60 month 2, 70 month 3, that's growth. Is it drastic? No, but that's okay. It's still growth. And if you manage to get yourself a client or a sponsorship or an affiliate or an ad and you're making money, that's a huge win. That is a huge win because that creates longevity for you to do the rest of the stuff. So that's another reason why it's so important to have access to all sorts of different data, because if you can only see listens, you think that's the only thing that matters, and it's not. Subscribers matters a ton, because subscribers, in a way, dictates the amount of, I don't want to say predictable listens, but I think that's probably the best way to predict it, is to know who and how many subscribers you have. And obviously, dollars made kind of speaks for itself. All right, as always, if you are interested in a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session, my link will be in the show notes below. I just want to help, whether it's naming your podcast, let's talk about the art. The most common thing is growth, monetization, and improving skills, whether it's interviewing skills, feeling more comfortable on audio or video, whatever it is. Those are the most common 3. So if you have any questions on that, you can always email me, kevin@nextleveluniverse.com, or book a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session. Next week, for episode number 102, how guest interviews are changing. So I am going to have a guest on this podcast. It'll be my first guest that I've ever had in over 100 episodes. That'll probably be episode 105, 106, 107, around there. Might be broken up into different episodes. I might even just do it as a bonus episode. I might do a solo episode that week and then just do this as a bonus. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. But for Next Level You, the show that has 1,718 episodes or something as of today, we haven't done a guest interview in probably like 1,000 episodes. And there's a reason behind that. There's a very deep reason behind that. So we're going to talk about that next week and how that may or may not affect you. As always, I hope your lighting is bright in whatever your studio is. I hope you feel like whatever your backdrop is good enough to put on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever. I hope you're taking messy action, because I think messy action is better than no action at all. I hope the people in your life are believing in you. I hope the guests are saying yes. I hope you're getting on other shows. I hope all that for you. Until next week, keep on crushing it, keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you then.